What's up, fight fans? This is Kurt DeVille with Counterpunch Boxing News, and I have some new news concerning Anthony Joshua, Oleksandr Usyk, and Carl Froch. Get this. Carl Froch states that he knows how Anthony Joshua trained for the Usyk fight, and he said that he wasn't ready. And Carl went on to say that it's quite simple. It's a really short answer. He didn't listen to Rob McCracken. He didn't do what he was told. He totally disregarded him, and that relationship broke down. And Rob wasn't in the corner for the rematch. And Froch was also under the tutelage of Rob McCracken, as we know, when he was fighting, and has kept a close relationship with him into retirement. He spoke on this and warning signs he had heard from behind the scenes of AJ's training camp. And he also said he must have known that their relationship was going to end, because I'm friends with Rob, and because I have conversations with him, I can't talk too much about what me and Rob talk about. But all I can say is it's quite easy for everyone who says that the first fight to see that Anthony Joshua did not listen to Rob McCracken and the training camp. I know, by the way, because you get a little insight from the camp and you hear other people talk about it. I'm not talking about Rob not wanting to do hard runs, not wanting to spar. If you don't do those sparring sessions and you don't do those running sessions, they're the two most important fundamental things. You're not ready for this fight. Those are the words of Carl the Cobra Froch, and let me counterpunch. First off, Carl, stop lying. You didn't hear that from Small Insights. Basically, he said, hey, I talk to Rob all the time, so I know what Rob told me. Then he says, well, I'm not saying it's from Rob. I'm just saying it's from little small insights from other people. Not Rob, though. But he didn't want to spar and he didn't want to run. Now, let's address that right now. If Anthony Joshua didn't want to spar and he didn't want to run, that's exactly what Rob told you. Okay? That's what he told you. That's what he shared with you. And you wanted to let everyone know without knowing that it came from Rob. I get it. Because, you know, Rob doesn't want to look like the messy person, you know. And if anybody's closest to Rob McCracken, it's Carl Froch. Carl Froch was that generation before Anthony Joshua, right? So he knows. And, he, you know, and then since Carl Froch is retired, that's exactly who he's going to talk to. He's not going to talk to nobody in the gym or in the camp because that's too close. But what he will talk to somebody that's close, that's no longer in the game of boxing. So he's going to share that with him because he doesn't have a pony in the show, right? So he's not going to be around to spread real rumors or whatever inside the camp. I don't think Rob would like that too much. But what he will do, he will talk to Carl Froch about what happened with Anthony Joshua in the first fight. But of course, we know the second fight he wasn't there. He was with Robert Garcia half-ass, right? So we know that, if anything, Rob McCracken is a guy that told his business to Carl Froch. Carl Froch then in return relayed the message to us. He relayed it to us. He let us know that Anthony Joshua wasn't sparring and he wasn't running. And that makes me think, like, okay, well, what the hell was Anthony Joshua doing? What was he doing? I mean, those are high accusations to say Anthony Joshua wasn't doing what he's supposed to do physically. You know, he wasn't ready for the fight. I mean, obviously so. He got beat. But then, you know, doesn't that kind of sound like a cop-out in a sense? Because it's like, okay, couldn't it have been that the other guy trained harder than you? He didn't do any running. He didn't do any sparring. Well, what are we really talking about? Who are we really talking about? Are we really talking about Anthony Joshua? Because it sounds like we're talking about how Deontay Wilder used to be, or somebody like that that really didn't want to commit to training because he didn't have to, because he's a star, or he's, the ego is there and he doesn't need it, and, those type of things. But it is interesting to know that this came from Rob McCracken. Make no mistake about it. So if Rob was stating that he wasn't running or he wasn't sparring, the question I have, who was really regulating what he did and what he didn't do? Where the hell was Rob anyway? I know Rob is the head of the GB team, the GB Olympic team, so maybe he wasn't there a lot of times. Maybe that's just something that he heard from other people, and it got back to him. And then that was what he told Carl, and then Carl is telling us. Maybe that's the case. I'm not really sure, but I can tell you this, all right? Anthony Joshua, if he didn't spar enough, if he didn't train enough, it is what it is. He did get tired in the last quarter of that fight. But the whole premise of Oleksandr Usyk fighting him is for him to go, I think he said 20 rounds. So he was supposed to be in condition enough to go that many rounds. So he had to be doing something that kept him. Well, if it was, not really necessarily running, maybe it was jump rope, maybe it was other cardio exercises that, ensured him mentally that he was ready, or whoever was in his team and what they were doing and what they got hired for. Because it's crazy to me that you have all those people around you and then you don't have the fundamentals of people that make sure you do what you do. See, if I was a strength and conditioning coach for Anthony Joshua, the last thing I would want to do is make sure somebody couldn't look back at me and say I wasn't doing my job. Just like this is what's happening. So what Carl is saying is whoever the hell was in charge of Anthony Joshua doing his exercises didn't do their job right. They just got paid. That's what I see. And I think that's not the case, though. Not saying he didn't do what he's supposed to do in that regard. It is interesting. It would be jacked up. It is very surprising. It makes me look at Anthony Joshua in a totally different way, because if he wasn't doing what he's supposed to do in the gym as opposed to exercising, because that's what he's known for. He's a gym rat, right? That's very surprising. That's mind-blowing, because it makes you think like, okay, well, maybe he is not as hard-working as we thought he was. Okay? Now, I also question what really happens in that regard of Joshua. I question that to really be the whole thing, the whole spectrum. So it's not as quite simple as Rob McCracken. Why? Because Rob McCracken and Anthony Joshua has known each other for a long time. And what cracked this wide open for me is where Anthony Joshua asked a stranger, how do I beat this guy? So that means it was more than just strength and conditioning. It was game plan and strategy that really wasn't talked about or discussed. Okay? And then again, you have to go back to the gift horse. What the hell was Rob McCracken there for if he was there at all? Who was there for Anthony Joshua if he had to ask a stranger on how do I beat this guy? I mean, right before the fight. And that was just one of those things like, okay, this solid, tight team that these guys appear to have, they don't. And so if he had to ask that type of question, how do I beat this guy? It's almost like, damn, your team that you spent all that money for ain't got together with you to explain to you, to strategize, how do you beat a shorter, smaller, faster man? And your whole idea was keep him long and box him? That's not a strategy at all. Because obviously if it didn't work, because Oleksandr Usyk was getting off, he was scoring, he was bobbing, he was weaving, he was defending, and he was attacking at will. So obviously that didn't work. So at some point, they did not have an airtight game plan for Anthony Joshua. So maybe that, along with Anthony Joshua not sparring and not, well, that's a part of strategy, but not running, I think that's the whole kit and caboodle. But you guys tell me what you think of Carl Froch, stating that Rob McCracken informed him, officially but unofficially, that Anthony Joshua wasn't ready because he wasn't doing the things that he's supposed to do. Of course, please subscribe, and you guys been counterpunching. Peace!